Okay, right, we're live. We had a couple of technical problems there, but I am delighted this evening to be live with a spine race record holder and Barkley Marathons fun run completer. First woman in almost a decade to complete one, and we've got our fingers crossed for perfect conditions for her to perhaps be the first ever woman to complete a whole Barclays at maybe at a future event. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Jasmin. Have you had a good day today? Running, working, mumming?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I actually had a day when I was working from home today, which was really nice. I've got quite a bad cold, so it was nice to just do my run at lunchtime and have a bit of extra time in bed in the morning.
Yeah, a little bit of a lie-in. Yeah, we'll cover your early starts in just a moment, but I'm first of all, personally, I'm just really intrigued after reading your blog as to how your mind changed from. You weren't convinced at first about the Barclays, were you? I just was wondering what made you change your mind.
I think it was probably it was something I kind of expected it might happen. It just happened kind of over time. I think that kind of the idea, the question of whether you can do it, that just sort of, it was there from the start, but it just sort of worked its way deeper into my kind of into my mind until it became a question I wanted to answer, really. So it just took that time, really. And also I kind of did a lot of reading, the blogs and watching the documentary and that sort of thing. And I think some of the initial reservations that I had about the race, the fact that it's in loops and the fact that sort of thing, and whether it would be a nice place to run, those sorts of questions, I think also I kind of I guess addressed any concerns I had from those angles as well, and that's why I kind of changed my mind.
Yeah, okay. It's just really interesting because you just seem to think, it doesn't sound like a good idea, and now you are perhaps a little bit obsessed with it, so that's really interesting. And just a little bit about the training. In your blog it says 80 plus miles a week, which is incredible in itself, with a maximum of 10,700 metres of ascent. You do a lot of 5 a.m. starts and sometimes even earlier at the weekend. How on earth are you not too tired in the day, like having a full-time job, 2 kids, such a busy life? How do you get yourself out of bed? Have you got any tips?
I mean, I guess I do get. I was definitely. It's hard. It's the first thing to say. It's not like it's and I guess I have one advantage is that I think I've always not needed quite as much sleep as other people. So that's like, even my mum says, even as a baby I was a nightmare because I didn't need to sleep. So I guess that's kind of something that's individual to me that maybe helps. But kind of from other aspects, it was challenging, and the things that I sort of did to try and get around it is when I didn't have like work to do in the evenings, like paperwork to do with clinics and so on, then I often went to bed at the same time as the kids. So once I got them in bed at like 8:30 or whatever, I just like would have a cup of tea or whatever and go to bed, or just go straight to bed. And those evenings were not that common, but when they happened it was nice, and it kind of gave me a bit of an extra bit of sleep when I needed it. And I was having 1 day a week as a rest day as well. So like on a Monday morning, that was like my lie until 7 a.m. It was really good.
Wow. So no binge watching Bridgerton until 11 p.m. then?
No, yeah. Well, we do like, it's difficult because you kind of have to balance it with also having like a normal family life and having some time with your partner. And so there were evenings when we stayed up as well. Just that they had to be the kind of exception rather than the norm.
Yeah. Well, you've got to dedicate yourself, haven't you, if you're going to do so well at things. I was just looking at the training that you wrote about on your blog, and I was wondering if you did any other types of training that isn't running. Like, do you do any strength work or anything?
Yeah, I do. Like, I was doing like 2 or 3 times a week doing a strength class with somebody called Coach D. So he does like an online strength class for a group of people, and that was really good because I struggle to do strength work unless I have a kind of somebody looking at me and telling me what to do. So kind of joining that group and feeling like it was a community, that really helped me. So that's something I'd recommend if you kind of struggle with strength work. For me, the main challenge with it was just the kids in the background, sitting on me, or like I tended to try and incorporate them when that happened and use them as weights for squats and that sort of thing. But it's challenging. And then I also like when I'm not doing clinical work, when I'm on research, and I drop kids off at nursery and then cycle from there into town and back. So that's, I don't know, it's like a total of about 10 miles of cycling a day. And then occasionally I would cycle all the way from home into the lab, and that's about 25 miles round trip. And then sometimes do some swimming as well, although I swim in the reservoir beside our house, so over winter it's not that much. But in the summer I do that as cross training as well.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's cool. So you do a bit of cross training as well, because it's important, isn't it? And so that's all physical preparation, which one of my patrons, Gillian, was really interested in. She says as well as mental preparation, as well as physical preparation, how did you mentally prepare for something like this? Because it's just so different, isn't it? The Barkley Marathons, like loops around a forest, navigating, is such a bizarre race. How do you prepare mentally for something so arduous?
I guess beforehand I didn't really know what to expect, so I just kind of had to guess in terms of the mental preparation. And I guess my sort of assumption was that it's going to get really hard at some point, because the majority of people don't finish. So probably you're going to be kind of hitting the wall in a big way at some point. So I guess that was part of my reasoning behind doing all the reps that I did. I'm coached by Damien Hall. And some of my long ones had kind of do lots of vert. I don't think he probably expected me to do as much as I did on those occasions when I ran up and down, like 22 times up the same hill. But I kind of in my head it was as much, I guess the mental training was a part of that as well. Because I knew that by the time I'd done it a couple of times, I was ready to stop and like move away and enjoy the views somewhere and that sort of thing. But it was a different sort of training than I actually ever done in my life before, because I didn't actually enjoy it that much. Like it was more that I was I felt that was kind of part of it, because it was also that over the sort of winter we had weekend after weekend of storms basically. So every weekend I was getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. to like run in a storm and get blown around and knocked over and stuff. So it was it was slightly different sort of than some of my training has been in the past, where it's been all about kind of having fun. This was it was a little bit about kind of facing that sort of mental barrier and just kind of working through it. And I guess I thought that was good training for when it got hard at Barkley, and it probably was. It's a sort of type 2 fun, but not so much enjoyment at the time.
yeah, definitely all good mental training to get out there in that terrible weather, for sure. It's really impressive just doing the training. Did you feel any pressure going into the Barkleys? Because I know that Laz at the National Running Show, he did mention you as a potential woman finisher, didn't he? Did you feel any pressure, or are you pretty chilled out about that kind of stuff?
I guess like it's always nice to be completely like the dark horse that nobody knows, and that like you can unexpectedly do well. But I mean, I went to Barkley to just do the best that I could, and like it's nice to be kind of for women to sort of be inspired and girls and so on by me. But I actually went to Barkley just to see whether I could do it for me, and it kind of irrespective of the fact that I was a woman, I just wanted to see how I could do on the course. So. Yeah. And the likelihood going into it is that you're not going to do it, because you just have to look at the statistics. So, I kind of I felt I sort of put pressure on myself to do as well as I could, especially after kind of all that I'd sacrificed in terms of time with, early mornings spent in bed with the kids type thing. But I didn't feel that much pressure externally, because I was doing it for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. And so how did it feel on arrival? Like, I know you're not allowed to kind of tell us too much about it, so don't overshare. Like any questions that you feel are too much, then just ignore. But how does it feel like on arrival? Because it's really built up, isn't it? And there must have been so many kind of other famous Barkleyers there. Was it a really cool atmosphere at camp?
I mean, it was nice, because it didn't feel like, to me it felt like fairly laid back, and it was just like, it was nice because it wasn't like some races there's all this kind of big media presence, and it's all kind of big fanfare because it's big, but Barkley's not big, you know, it's small, it's a small event, and it sort of kind of has quite a family feel about it. They even refer to kind of a Barkley family. Yes, I mean, we got there and we put up a tent and we did the kind of things that you do the day before the race, but it felt pretty, it felt like kind of going to a campground in the middle of a state park with other runners, but there wasn't, it didn't even feel that much like it was kind of a big gathering, like a big event, the way that the race like the UT, and it's totally different. It's probably the polar opposite, something like the UTMB.
Yeah, that's a huge race, isn't it? Tons can't get through Chamonix. Cool. So I just was interested. We've only got you here for like 15 more minutes, so I just wanted to kind of distill your experience into like what was the best part and what was the worst part. Like, was there real polar opposites in the way that you felt throughout the race?
So I guess the most, I guess the first loop was sort of really enjoyable in terms of like, the sun was shining, and there were sections on the first loop when I felt like it was really genuinely type 1 fun, and the forest is beautiful, it's like it's kind of still quite wintry and sort of brown. But it's it's wild, and we love running in kind of wild places, and generally as a community. So I enjoyed that, and at that point you're kind of still fresh, and it's daylight, and you could see where you're going. And I was at times I was with people that knew where they were going. So that was really enjoyable. I guess the worst. I'm trying to think what the worst points were. I guess the third loop was obviously tireder. I was on my own. And towards the end I got lost a few times, which was pretty stressful because I was sort of like, I had this big time kind of buffer initially, but then I knew that I was sort of losing that. It was just like 4 hours just trickled away until I was sort of racing the clock to get back after my last getting lost experience, when I sort of came off the ridge slightly the wrong way. So that was kind of probably that was why I probably had to dig deepest right at the end, actually, just to kind of tell myself, like, work out where you are, and then sort of run as fast as you can, which is hard after you've been out there for 40 hours. But on the second loop in the night, I guess, was where we had the sort of worst weather, and that was the night, and got pretty cold, and at that point I was on my own as well. So those were kind of the different, for slightly different reasons they were hard, but that was when most people dropped out, was on the second loop in the night when the weather got really bad. And really bad, it rained a lot, like it rained non-stop, kind of heavy rain, and it was in the forecast, but then it happened.
It sounded really tough, and we've got a question from Tony Reeves, who wants to know how you cope with any negative head voices when it gets tough. Do you have any tips for Tony there, when it's, things are getting tough and it's still a long way to go?
I mean, it's kind of, it's hard because I get asked that question a lot. I think at Barkley, like, I was so like determined to sort of do it that I'm trying to think. It's hard to now kind of remember exactly, but I didn't so much sort of feel, I guess there was a time on loop 2 when I was a bit like, I mean, I didn't really think about pulling out, but I guess I had this sort of feeling, maybe it won't be so bad if I don't make it back in time to go out again, type thing. But then by the time I did kind of make it back from loop 2, by then I would like, it was daylight again, and it stopped raining, and I was totally up for going out again. So I guess in answer to the question, what do I do? I kind of, I guess for me, I'd put so much kind of effort into training for Barkley, and the kind of all that time that I'd sort of sacrificed for it, that I sort of felt that I needed to give it my best possible shot. And also, I mean, we left the kids at home and we went away for a week, me and Conrad. My parents were looking after the kids, so I sort of knew that other people had sacrificed a lot for me to be there as well. And I also knew that if I finished at, after being out for 12 hours or whatever, I still wasn't going to see the kids for another week, or not, another 5 days or whatever. It wasn't going to get me back to them any quicker. So in some ways that was probably a good thing. Like, it meant that I could totally immerse myself in the race. But generally, I guess in Barkley, I didn't even really have to do it that much. I didn't really have to sort of think about pleasant things to make myself sort of be able to keep going. And the answer is that, like, at Barkley, I felt like I was concentrating the whole time, like, where I was going. Like, in the spine, I had quite a lot of time to kind of, just as I was going along to, I don't know, think about other things and but at the Barkley, you have to concentrate the whole time on where you're going. And that's part of the challenge, I think, is like there's no let up at all. You just, and it's hard to do that for 40 hours or 60 hours straight.
What, I don't know if you're able to answer this question, but what makes the terrain and the navigation quite so hard? Like, it's hard to see because you watch the film and you're like, it's just going for a forest, but like how is it so hard?
Well, I guess, like, if you're just going through a forest, you've not really got any features to kind of base things on. Like in the UK, we used to sort of being able to look around and see, like, there's that valley and there's that hill. So I guess if you imagine kind of navigating in the dark in the UK, that's like that helps you sort of imagine a bit what it's like in a forest. Because when you're just, like, it's steep and you're just surrounded by trees, you might get to a stream, but you don't know if you've hit it too low down or too high up, and it's not that easy to work out which of those two, to the situation is. And so you might have to change your compass bearing halfway down a hill. Then again, it's hard to know because the terrain's quite difficult, so it's hard to kind of keep tabs on how far you've gone. So I mean, there's lots of features. There's some other features that kind of I won't go into too much, reasons that I won't go into too much, but the navigation's not that easy. It's because it's not just about following a map. There's some element to it that just comes with, I think, that basically being a veteran gives you a big advantage for certain aspects of the nav, I think.
Yeah, you can kind of, like, you remember a bit, I suppose, from doing it a couple of years. Yeah. I don't think anybody has completed the Barkleys on their first attempt, have they? I think they have. Oh, wow.
Certainly one person did, but I think that might have been a time where you could go out and you could still recce the course.
Oh, okay.
So there was a year when, like, there was a time before when you were allowed to recce the course, and at that point, at that point, so I think somebody went out there and actually recce'd, recce basically spent 2 weeks recceing the course and then ran it on the first attempt.
Oh, I see.
think that everyone's done it since that's not been allowed. Certainly some of it's not local, but I might be wrong.
Yeah, it does sound like a big advantage. And also, not on your side are the books that you have to collect. Do you have a particularly amusing book that you had to collect? Does anything stand out as particularly depressing or amusing to you during the race?
I've not actually got the titles with me here. I should have brought them with me. I've got, like, the pages of the books. But I looked at the pages. I looked at the book titles when during the first loop I looked at most of them, and they were amusing. Like, the sorts of titles like The Road to Hell and that sort of thing. So but they're all along those lines.
yeah, that's just to perk you up a bit mid-race.
That sort of title, yeah.
So I've got a question from Arlene. She said some of the photos of Jasmin showed that her legs were very scratched up by the briars. I hope she's healed up now. And looking back, is there any kit that she wished she'd had during the event, and like that you might take differently if you ever try the event in the future? Have you got any things that you might swap or change?
Yeah, so, like, it's true, the briars, you do get pretty scratched up. It's funny because, like, it's almost like you're not actually that, like, it was not very pleasant getting scratched, but it was more annoying because they actually just hold you back. So when your kind of legs get stuck in them, sometimes they get stuck around your, like, neck as well, or so, like, it's going down the rat jaw bit, which is the bit that everybody sees on the photos. And by the way, that top bit is the bit that's, like, really not steep at all. It gets very steep when you leave the field of view. That bit's, like, totally steep. So, like, I was going down there with my poles, like, in front of my face, because that at least kept some of the briars off my face. because I think this year they weren't mown. Apparently later in the season they get mown, but so basically in terms of kit, I guess I had long socks. Actually, I had planned I might wear long socks, and I didn't take them in the end. I think for next year, if I went next year, I would work out I'd do a bit more training and working out the long sock thing, or wearing orienteering gaiters.
Yeah,
I was a bit
those
nervous.
bramble bashers.
I hadn't actually trained in them, so I was a bit nervous to go out and run a long event, because you don't know if they're going to rub or that sort of thing. But ultimately, I don't think I would. It was nice wearing waterproof trousers on the kind of wet loop and so on, just because they protected my legs. But I wouldn't do that unless it was actually cold or wet, because you just get too hot. And I think the kind of disadvantage of getting too hot and sort of dehydrated and everything is a big, for me, would be a big disadvantage. So I'd rather be scratched than unable to continue for other reasons.
Yeah. And so you said in your blog that you can see now why the Barkleys becomes an obsession. So would you call yourself obsessed with the Barkleys now? And why, if you are?
I don't know, I'm obsessed, but I guess the fact that I kind of want to go back and see if I can do it, if I can do any better, probably means that I am to some extent obsessed. I get, because I said at the start I wasn't sure initially why, whether I wanted to do it, and therefore I wasn't entirely sure whether why anybody would go back. But I guess now, I do get that. I get that kind of, you've done it, you've had a go, and I guess maybe seem that you think it might be possible. There's that, because I think if I'd gone and I thought there's no way that I could ever possibly finish this, then I'd be happy to leave it. I guess the fact that I'm sort of interested in going back means that I think that it would be possible. He changes the course of it every year though, so that kind of is dependent on that. And there's also so many other factors at Barkley, so it's about the weather, and it's about, the weather's a big thing. I think that can be so changeable. If there was a couple of foot of snow, I think it would just, a little bit of snow would be good, because you'd be able to see where you were going, the route in the snow. Yeah. A lot of snow, I think that would just become absolutely impossible. And then things like navigation, you've got, because you have to concentrate all the time. Then I think by the time you started to get tired, it would be easy to make a mistake that would just cost you too much time, because you're not, you're going to kind of be on the edge of what's possible time-wise anyway. It's not like you've got hours and hours to kind of chuck away.
Yeah.
So all those feature factors,
Yeah, so you could see how you'd just go back, you'd just be like, oh, if only next year the weather might be better, or next year I might do this better. You could see how you could go back. Exactly,
yeah, and that's the problem, because you're I don't know how many years I'm willing to, do
all that training.
Kind of space for that training, to make myself do that all winter again. I can do it, certainly do it another year. How many more years I can do that, I don't know. And also how many times I'm kind of willing to fly to the States and all that sort of stuff as well. Don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you about that, because I know that you're really interested in the climate, and you're really proactive in being planet friendly. So how do you reconcile your climate worries with international travel? I'm keen to hear what you do, because I want to do the same.
No, not at all. But and that's for me is now a big concern. It's interesting because I think it's only really in the last couple of years that I've become more aware of it, and maybe that's kind of in line with lots of people. I guess we all, we care about the environment. We love the outdoor places and the wild places just by the nature, and that's why we do what we do. And that's why, once you start understand, once you kind of admit realize what's going to happen, what is happening, then it's frightening. So in terms of answering your question, that's what I did struggle kind of with that, whether it was right to fly to the States for Barkley. I guess I sort of in answer, apart from offsetting the flights, I think ultimately we do need to kind of reduce our international travel for races. So that's the only race we're flying to this year. I didn't apply to Hard Rock, even though I want to run that, because if I got in, I felt that I wouldn't want to fly for a second time to the States in 1 year. So that's kind of one part of the answer. so like selecting the races, like maybe one race that you have to travel to a year, and making that kind of special race. For me, we also saw my brother who lives in the States, so we kind of at least managed to combine the two. But then in terms of other races, so for example, we have family in Europe so we now travel by ferry and drive. And we now have an electric car for kind of doing day-to-day run around kind of travel. And I'm going to go to the UTMB by train is my plan.
Oh, cool.
So kind of trying to make changes. But I also, totally admit it, I'd be a hypocrite to say, like, there's lots of things I could still improve. And whether you entirely eliminate any travel to kind of big races, I don't know, is the answer. But at the moment, I guess I'm trying to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all are much more aware in the last few years. I totally agree with that. So you're going to the UTMB. Do you have any other exciting plans that you're able to share with us about 2022 and 2023?
So I'm going to run the boat race with my brother Václav, which is the Scottish Islands peaks race.
Fun.
So you go, so it's a boat that you go on a boat between you go to Mull and you run up the Munro there, and then you go to Jura and run over the Paps, and then to Arran and run up Goat Fell, and then sail back to Troon. So I'm running that with my brother, which is great. So we kind of tend to do about like one race a year together.
Oh,
and
nice.
I usually pick something like that, like a real kind of classic hill race, something that's kind of a bit testing, and my poor brother get going right in the deep end after his sort of year of spent of training in New York.
Is he just as good as you, or is you the sporty one of the family?
No, he's very good. I mean, he has all he has to train is in his Central Park, so like given that he's very good. But I suspect that I might be the one carrying the bag by the time we get to the later hills on the Scottish Islands Peaks race.
Yeah.
So I'm doing that, and then kind of I don't like other things are a little bit unclear. I might run the Yorkshire 3 Peaks race at the end of this month.
Oh, fantastic.
It depends, because I still don't feel like fully recovered from Barkley, and now I've got this kind of cold, so it just depends on feeling as to whether I do that. And then so that's. But I'm not putting too much pressure on myself. I guess the next big target would be the UTMB. Yeah,
that's super exciting, and I hope to go there too. So I'm going to look into the ferry and the train options as well. And just the last question that we've got time for tonight, just very quickly, how important is it for you to inspire the next generation of young sports people?
Yeah, no, I mean that's like hugely important to me, and that's, I guess, part of the reason that I've sort of done interviews and stuff so far. Just because I think like looking at my daughter and my son, I sort of feel like if I can do anything to inspire my children and other people's children to kind of take up sport, not for any sort of necessarily being elite athletes, but just to have something to to take them through life. I think sport and being outdoors is such a kind of gift, both for your physical health but also your mental health, and just to be happy. It's given me so much, and I feel like it's a kind of gift to me to be able to share that with people and inspire other people. I think that's a real privilege of the position that I'm in. So if I can use that for so kind of as a platform for good, then that's for me a real benefit of doing any sort of social media and kind of interview type stuff.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. It has been really inspiring tonight, and I've really enjoyed talking to you and hearing all about the Barkleys and about what you're going to be doing next as well. So how can people follow you if they want to find out more about the Barkleys and your write-ups and things?
So I have a blog which is called Talking of Fells, so I think if you Google that you'll probably see it. And then I'm on Twitter as well, but I don't post very much. It's kind of they come occasionally, my posts. But yeah, so those are kind of the two ways.
Awesome. Oh, thank you so much, Jasmin. I just want to read out one live comment as well just before you go. John Gardner says, congratulations to Jasmin for her remarkable performance. Should she want to give it another go, her experience would give her a big asset. So So yeah, he's rooting for you already. Well, thank you so much for talking to us tonight, Jasmin. I hope you have a really good week, and hope that you recover soon from your cold, and potentially do the 3 peaks, because it's a really fun route, that one. So yeah, thank you so much, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, bye.
Bye.